The following conversation never actually happened. It is a work of creative fiction featuring AI-generated voices. Please enjoy it as a thought experiment, not as a factual historical account.
This is the Time Capsule Lounge.
Your Majesty is too generous.
Not generous, Niccolò. Discerning. And please, in this curious place, let us dispense with formalities. Oh, it seems we have an audience.
Indeed. Our private conversation appears to have become public.
Well, then we must comport ourselves with the dignity befitting our stations. The masks of power must be worn once more.
Appearance is often as important as substance in matters of state.
How fascinating that even in this timeless place we must still perform our roles. In Russia, I carefully cultivated different personas for different audiences. The enlightened philosopher for Voltaire and Diderot, the Russian matriarch for my subjects.
And which persona do we present to these invisible listeners?
I suppose we show them rulers that history remembers, though maybe with more candor than we might have allowed in life.
Honesty from sovereigns? Now that would truly be supernatural.
Perhaps this lounge has magical properties after all.
It seems our host has left instructions. We are to introduce ourselves.
How curious. Please introduce yourselves to our listeners. Very well. I am Yekaterina Alexeyevna, Catherine II of Russia, though history has seen fit to call me the Great. Born Princess Sophie of Anhalt-Zerbst in what you would call Germany, I came to Russia at 14 to marry the heir to the throne. In 1762, with support of Imperial Guard, I ascended to become Empress of all Russia, a position I held for 34 years. During my reign, I expanded Russia's borders, corresponded with great minds of the Enlightenment, reformed education, and attempted to modernize Russian law, though not always successfully. I built the majestic Hermitage, defeated the Ottoman Empire, and yes, had a number of favorites. But above all, I transformed Russia into European power to be reckoned with.
34 years on the throne? Ottoman Empire defeated? And you came to power through a coup against your own husband? Ekaterina Alexeyevna, in my time I observed many rulers, but few with such formidable achievements. Most princes struggled merely to hold what they inherited.
When opportunity presents itself, one must seize it decisively, wouldn't you agree? But enough about me. I'm curious to hear about the man whose name became synonymous with political strategy. Please introduce yourself.
Right. I am Niccolò Machiavelli of Florence. I served as a diplomat and senior official in the Florentine Republic from 1498 until 1512, when the Medici family returned to power and had me imprisoned and tortured. During my subsequent exile from political life, I wrote various works, most notably The Prince and the Discourses on Livy. Though I sought to describe the reality of politics as I observed it, I understand my name has become associated with cunning, amorality, and the pragmatic exercise of power. Whether this reputation is deserved, I leave to history to judge.
Your reputation precedes you, Signor Machiavelli. Though I must confess, I find the man himself rather more charming than his infamy would suggest.
And I find myself in the presence of a ruler who seems to embodies what I could only theorize, the perfect balance of force and finesse, of feared authority and calculated charm.
You flatter me. But yes, ruler must be both powerful and clever. One without other leads to ruin.
Indeed. And speaking of ruin, I understand your rise to power was rather expedient?
If you are referring to my husband's removal from the throne, it was necessity. Russia needed stable leadership. Peter was unsuited to rule.
I see. Sometimes the circumstances demand decisive action.
Power is rarely given freely, Niccolò. More often, it must be taken by those with vision and courage to wield it properly.
Vero. Tell me, how did you come to take the throne? The mechanics of such transitions fascinate me.
It was quite straightforward, really. My husband Peter had alienated virtually everyone of importance: the church, the Senate, the imperial guard. He admired Frederick of Prussia excessively and seemed eager to change everything Russian into something Prussian.
Oh.
The situation grew increasingly dangerous for me. Rumors spread that he intended to divorce me, disown my son Paul, and confine me to convent. With his obvious preference for his mistress, court instability was reaching a crisis point.
Your rise to power involved the military quite directly. How did you, a German princess with no military experience, secure the loyalty of the Russian Imperial Guard?
Carefully and methodically. From the moment I arrived in Russia, I studied the power structures. I observed how Peter the Great's daughter, Empress Elizabeth, maintained control of guards. When I realized my husband Peter was losing their support through his excessive admiration of Prussia, Russia's enemy, I saw my opportunity.
You exploited his tactical error.
I made myself visible to guards. I wore their uniform during my coup, the uniform of the Preobrazhensky Regiment. I learned Russian while my husband refused to. I publicly participated in Russian Orthodox rituals while he mocked them. Every action was deliberate.
Creating contrast between yourself and your husband.
Exactly. When moment came, the choice between us was clear to them. I represented Russian pride and tradition. He represented foreign influence and disrespect.
And after securing power, how did you maintain their loyalty?
Generously, but carefully. I rewarded the guards who supported me, but never allowed any single military leader to become too powerful. I balanced military authority among several trusted commanders, and I made sure to appear at military reviews and celebrations, always reminding them their empress valued their service.
You never let them forget who commanded them. Classic strategy. Reward loyalty but prevent any rival power center from emerging.
I also ensured that guards officers received excellent training and education. Educated officer is often more loyal than ignorant one. He understands the complexities of governance and necessity of order. Ah, what's this?
My most famous work, it seems. The Medici would have appreciated such a handsome binding. Perhaps it might have improved their reception of my political counsel.
The Prince. I read this, of course. Your famous treatise. Though I believe I absorbed more from your discourses on Livy when considering my own approach to governance.
Oh? How so?
Your Prince is manual for maintaining power. Useful, certainly. But your discourses speak more to building institutions, to creating something lasting. Though this particular passage always struck me as perceptive. Since men love at their own pleasure and fear at the pleasure of the prince, a wise prince should build his foundation upon that which is his own, not upon that which belongs to others.
You quote me well. And you understood the essence. A ruler's foundation must be self-reliant. You demonstrated this precisely in your coup. You relied on your own cunning and cultivated loyalty, not on the whims of others.
The timing was essential. Had I waited even a day longer, I might have been imprisoned. Had I moved too early, without sufficient support, I would have failed. You write about fortune, fortuna, and virtu. I've always found these concepts intriguing.
Ah, the twin forces that shape all political destiny. Fortuna is like a river, sometimes flowing peacefully, allowing for calm navigation, but other times raging in violent floods that destroy everything in their path. No ruler, however mighty, can fully control these external circumstances. War, plague, economic shifts, the sudden death of allies or enemies.
And virtu is the ruler's capacity to master these chaotic forces of fortune?
It is far more than mere virtue in the moral sense. Virtu encompasses a ruler's capacity to assess situations clearly, adapt swiftly to changing circumstances, and act decisively when necessary. It combines intelligence, courage, timing, and psychological insight. When you recognized the precariousness of your position with Peter, gathered your allies methodically, and struck at precisely the right moment. That was virtu personified.
So even best-laid plans require favorable circumstances to succeed.
And the wisest rulers recognize which elements they can control and which they cannot. A prince with virtu builds dams and channels to prepare for the river's flooding. They cannot prevent the flood, but they can direct its course to minimize damage or even benefit from its force. Your coup succeeded because you had both the favorable circumstance of widespread dissatisfaction with Peter and the personal qualities to transform that dissatisfaction into support for yourself.
In my case, Fortuna presented dangerous situation. Peter's increasing hostility, the court's dissatisfaction, the military's restlessness. But it was virtu that allowed me to recognize the moment and act decisively.
Precisely. The ruler with virtu doesn't passively accept fate, but wrestles with it, shapes it, sometimes even seems to command it. Fortune may control half our actions, but it allows us to direct the other half, and it is in that half where greatness emerges.
I felt that division most acutely the night before we acted. I barely slept, staring at ceiling, aware that by next sunset, I would either be Empress of Russia or dead corpse. In those dark hours, fortune had set the stage, but the next move was entirely mine.
Yet you showed no fear?
I could not afford to. In those moments, hesitation is death. The conspirators, even my closest allies like the Orlov brothers, would have abandoned me at first sign of weakness.
Yes, this is precisely what I observed. Men are fickle creatures. They will follow strength and abandon weakness. You understood this instinctively.
Not instinctively, perhaps. I learned through observation and necessity. For 18 years, I watched Russian court, its factions, its loyalties, its weaknesses. I learned the language, converted to orthodoxy, made myself more Russian than those born to it. When the moment came, I knew exactly who could be trusted, who could be persuaded, and who would need to be neutralized.
And your husband? Was he neutralized?
Peter abdicated and was placed under guard. He died shortly thereafter. Some say he was killed by Alexei Orlov in a drunken brawl, but I never ordered his death.
But you did not prevent it either?
I was not present, and a deposed ruler always remains focal point for dissent. His death, while regrettable, removed significant threat to Russia's stability.
You need not justify it to me, of all people. I understand the necessities of statecraft. When the security of the state is at stake, the wise ruler considers consequences, not sentimentalities.
I am not without sentiment, Niccolò, but my duty to Russia took precedence over all else.
As it should. The state's well-being is the highest law. You acted as a true prince, or princess, rather. But tell me, after securing power, how did you maintain it for so long? 34 years is quite a reign.
By understanding that power has many dimensions. Military strength, yes. I expanded our borders and strengthened armies, but also through culture, education, law, and spectacle. Power isn't just feared. It must be admired, even loved when possible.
You speak of love. As you may have read in my treatises, if a ruler cannot be both feared and loved, then it is safer to be feared.
And yet, I managed both. The nobles feared my resolve. They saw what happened to those who plotted against me. But common people loved Matushka. I built schools, codified laws, brought art and culture. I was careful to appear in public in modest Russian dress during religious festivals. I played to the Russian love of motherhood and tradition, even while bringing European ideas to the court.
A sophisticated approach. You created multiple sources of legitimacy for your rule.
Yes, and among those sources was my reputation as an enlightened monarch. I corresponded regularly with the great European thinkers of my time, collected their libraries, and incorporated their ideas into my governance, at least where practical.
Tell me more about these Enlightenment ideas that so captivated you.
In my time, governance was still deeply entwined with religious authority.
The Enlightenment placed reason above superstition, science above dogma. Voltaire, Diderot, Montesquieu, they envisioned societies guided by rational principles rather than tradition alone.
And you believed such radical notions were compatible with absolute monarchy?
I saw no contradiction. In fact, an enlightened monarch could implement rational reforms far more efficiently than chaotic republic. Russia's vastness and diversity required strong central authority. Without it, the nation would fragment into feuding regions.
Yet these philosophers often criticized absolute power, did they not?
Indeed they did, while accepting my patronage and praise. Voltaire and I exchanged over 200 letters. He criticized despotism in theory while flattering me in practice. I found the contradiction rather entertaining. Ah, my nakas! How remarkable to see it again.
What is this text?
My greatest legislative work, or attempt, at least. After ascending to the throne, I secluded myself for 2 years to write this document, drawing on Montesquieu, Beccaria, and other Enlightenment thinkers. It was to be the foundation for a new legal code for all of Russia.
The purpose of all society is the welfare of the people. Equality consists in the citizens being subject to the same laws. These are progressive principles, Ekaterina. Almost radical.
I truly believed in them. I organized the Legislative Commission in 1767 with representatives from all free classes, nobles, merchants, even state peasants, to draft a new code based on my nakas.
And yet I see you preserved serfdom, essentially slavery, for most of your population.
Reality often constrains idealism, Niccolò. You of all people should understand that. I did believe serfdom should eventually end, but abolishing it immediately would have turned the nobility against me. They would have deposed me at once.
The wise prince never antagonizes the powerful unless he can neutralize them first. Your caution was prudent.
The Legislative Commission ultimately produced nothing concrete. When the war with Turkey began, I had convenient excuse to disband it. In truth, Russia wasn't ready for such dramatic reform.
Or perhaps the reforms were not truly in your interest. A population with rights might demand a say in governance.
I genuinely desired progress for Russia. But after Pugachev's rebellion, when thousands of common folk rose up, committing atrocities against landowners, I recognized that education must precede liberty. Ignorant free man can be more dangerous than educated peasant.
So you focused on education instead?
Precisely. I established Russia's first state-funded schools for girls, the Smolny Institute. I created Commission for National Schools and built hundreds of schools across Russia. I believed education would gradually transform society without the bloodshed of revolution.
A strategic compromise. Appear progressive to Europe, maintain control at home, and plant seeds for future change without risking immediate instability.
You understand the delicate balance of rule, Niccolò. Sometimes, appearing to move toward change while carefully controlling its pace is the wisest course.
Your political instincts are remarkable, Yekaterina. You understood something that eludes most rulers, the difference between damaging vices and merely inconvenient ones. The truly dangerous failings are those that cost you your throne, alienating the military, bankrupting the treasury, appearing weak to enemies. When these don't threaten your power, why sacrifice useful pleasures merely to appease moralists?
Precisely. I cultivated reputation of an enlightened monarch among European intellectuals. This strengthened Russia's standing and my own legitimacy. Whether I fully implemented these ideas was secondary.
Tell me about your correspondence with these philosophers. Did they influence your governance in practical ways?
Well, Diderot visited my court in 1773. We spoke for hours each day for several months. His ideas were brilliant, but utterly impractical. I once pointed out to him that he works only on paper, and paper accepts anything. Paper is smooth and flexible, and offers no obstacles either to your imagination or your pen. While I, poor empress, work on human skin, which is far more irritable and ticklish.
Well said. The gap between theory and practice is ever the challenge of governance.
You know I purchased Diderot's library. He needed money, and I allowed him to keep the books until his death, even paid him salary as their librarian. I also bought Voltaire's library after his death. Supporting these thinkers burnished my reputation while giving me access to latest ideas.
A clever investment. Reputation is a currency as valuable as gold in international relations.
You know, many critics have suggested I merely appeared progressive while maintaining the status quo. That's not entirely fair. Beyond what we've discussed, I secularized church lands, established religious tolerance, reformed local governance, encouraged inoculation against smallpox. I even founded Russia's first medical college.
Few rulers have succeeded in navigating such a difficult balance between tradition and progress. The fact that you maintained power while implementing such changes speaks to your political acumen.
You know, the nakaz itself was revolutionary enough that it was banned in France. I truly and genuinely did aspire to enlightened rule, even if political reality meant compromise.
This enlightened absolutism of yours sounds like an elegant solution to the fundamental problem of governance: how to implement change without triggering revolution.
That was precisely my aim. Russia needed to advance, but at pace it could sustain. Too rapid change invites chaos, too little breeds stagnation. I sought the middle path.
It's fascinating to see how some of the ideas I explored developed into a coherent philosophy of governance.
Tell me, Niccolò, what do you make of my attempt to bridge idealism and pragmatism? In your eyes, did I succeed where others failed?
Well, you ruled for 34 years, expanded your empire, and died peacefully in your bed. Rare accomplishments for any monarch. By those measures, you succeeded brilliantly. Whether your enlightened ideals truly took root in Russia, that judgment belongs to history.
And history, I find, is rarely kind to female rulers. My achievements are often overshadowed by gossip about my personal life.
Indeed. People prefer simple narratives to complex truths. Perhaps that's why my name became synonymous with ruthlessness, while my Republican ideals in the discourses are frequently overlooked.
To being misunderstood by history, then.
And yet remembered nonetheless.
What's this wooden box with a slot? Some sort of donation box for church?
No, it appears to be a voting box. We had similar devices in Florence for council elections, though this one seems more substantial. Made for many votes, not just those of a few council members.
Voting? For common people? What an extraordinary concept.
Ah, this must be from the modern era. A ballot box for what they call democratic elections. In my time, Florence had elements of republican governance. Certain citizens could vote for representatives in the signoria, but it was limited to guild members and nobles.
And they allowed just anyone to decide matters of state. How could a peasant possibly understand complex issues of governance and diplomacy?
The theory, as I understand it, is that rulers should derive their authority from the consent of the governed. That power flows upward from the people, not downward from divine right.
A recipe for chaos. My Russian peasants couldn't even read. How could they possibly select capable leaders?
Yet I suspect the reality is more complex. Tell me, Yekaterina, when you needed the support of nobles or the church, did you not carefully shape how they perceived you and your intentions?
Ah, I see where you're heading. Yes, of course. I showed the church my devotion, the nobles my respect for their privileges, and the military my strength.
And in these modern democracies, I imagine those seeking power must similarly shape how they are perceived by different groups. The appearance changes, but the essence remains, managing perceptions to secure power.
So instead of convincing a handful of powerful nobles, one must convince thousands or millions of ordinary citizens?
Precisely. And therein lies both challenge and opportunity. The masses are more fickle, more emotional in their judgments than calculating nobles. They respond less to reasoned arguments and more to passions, to fears and hopes.
So how would one manage this broader audience?
Through carefully crafted illusions of truth. In my writings, I noted that for a ruler, there are times when the appearance of virtue is more important than virtue itself. Not because virtue is unimportant, but because perception shapes reality in the minds of those who judge us.
Tell me more.
During my diplomatic missions, I witnessed how the most successful leaders mastered the art of necessary deception. The Duke of Valentinois, Cesare Borgia, son of Pope Alexander VI, provided the most instructive example.
Oh, the infamous Borgia family. Their reputation reached even Russia.
Even to Russia? Fascinating. Well, in 1502, Borgia faced a serious threat. His own mercenary captains, the Orsini and Vitelli families, had become disloyal, secretly communicating with his enemies. Rather than confront them directly, he feigned ignorance of their betrayal. He sent warm letters, offered generous terms, and convinced them to meet him at Senigallia for reconciliation.
And when they arrived?
He separated them from their guards, had them seized immediately, and by evening the ringleaders were strangled.
Ah, how brutally effective.
But what makes this more than mere brutality was the aftermath. Before Borgia's rule, the Romagna was chaotic and lawless. After this decisive action, he established effective governance. The deception, while severe, brought stability where there had been only suffering.
So the end justified the means in your assessment?
Not all means for any end. But when deception serves the greater stability of the state, yes. I judge actions by their consequences for the people, not merely by abstract moral principles.
Yes. And there are times when truth itself becomes liability, you know. During the Pugachev rebellion, I controlled information carefully. Reports of his successes were suppressed, while his failures were broadcast widely. Had I allowed unfiltered news to spread, panic might have followed.
This understanding is central to effective rule. The truth that serves the state is the truth that should be told. Sometimes complete honesty creates unnecessary dangers.
But in your personal life, Niccolò, did you practice such flexible approaches to truth?
In diplomacy, certainly, it was my duty to Florence. But in my private writings and with close friends, I valued honest discourse. My letters to friends contained my unvarnished thoughts. There's a certain freedom in private honesty that balances public necessity.
I felt the same in my correspondence with my closest advisors. Only with them could I express my true doubts, fears, and ambitions.
But these modern rulers facing such boxes, they must practice deception on a scale we could scarcely imagine. When every citizen has a voice, managing what they believe has to become the central challenge of governance.
I wonder what tools they use for such widespread persuasion.
In my time, we had public proclamations, sermons from allied priests, carefully staged public spectacles. But with so many people, they must have methods far beyond our experience.
I commissioned paintings and monuments to shape how people saw me. Perhaps they have similar tools, but more immediate?
Absolutely. Consider how the printing press changed everything even in my time. Suddenly, ideas could spread faster than ever before. Take the religious reformers of my era. Their challenges to church authority succeeded largely because their writings could be reproduced quickly. Imagine if such technology advanced even further.
That would make controlling narrative much more difficult. When I wanted something believed throughout Russia, I could simply decree it. But if everyone can spread their own version of events...
Exactly. The clever ruler would need to adapt. Rather than preventing false information, perhaps they would flood the public with so many competing narratives that people couldn't distinguish truth from falsehood. Or they might allow minor criticisms while concealing larger issues. The appearance of transparency without its substance.
Or perhaps they simply ensure that those who control these methods of spreading information are loyal to them. I maintained control partly by rewarding those who supported me and removing those who didn't.
The principle remains consistent across centuries. Control the means by which information spreads, and you control how people perceive reality. This seemingly simple box represents a profound challenge to rulers. It forces them to convince rather than command.
In some ways, I faced similar challenges. Even as an absolute monarch, I needed the willing cooperation of nobility, the church, the military. Fear alone was insufficient. I needed their genuine support.
That's why your reign succeeded where others failed. You understood that power requires both the rod and the carrot, both respect and affection.
So these modern rulers with their voting boxes, you think they must balance truth and necessary fiction, just as we did?
But on a vastly larger scale. Imagine trying to maintain different appearances for nobles, clergy, merchants, and peasants simultaneously, each group receiving messages crafted specifically for their concerns. The complexity would be enormous.
Perhaps I was fortunate to rule in simpler times.
Yet the fundamental principles I observed remain true. First, understand human nature. People want to believe what benefits them. Second, recognize that most judge by appearances rather than reality. Third, know when truth serves your aims and when it undermines them.
Tell me, Niccolò, in your famous work, where is it? Ah, here. In this book, you advised the prince to appear merciful, faithful, humane, religious, and upright. Were you advocating deception?
Not deception for its own sake, but strategic necessity. A ruler who is always completely honest in all affairs of state places both himself and his people at risk. Would you tell an enemy your true military strength? Would you announce your doubts during a crisis?
Of course not. When Prussia threatened our western borders, I projected absolute confidence even while privately worrying about our readiness.
Exactly. The wise ruler distinguishes between harmful lies and necessary illusions. The first serves only the liar's selfish interests. The second serves the stability and security of the state.
So these modern elected rulers, would you advise them to be completely honest with their people?
I would advise them to be honest when possible and prudent when necessary. The ruler who never deceives may be morally pure, but typically ineffective. The ruler who always deceives will eventually lose all trust. The art lies in knowing the difference between destructive deception and constructive illusion.
A delicate balance indeed.
This was always the heart of my philosophy, though few understood it. I never advocated immorality for its own sake. I simply recognized that in an imperfect world, perfect virtue can sometimes lead to disaster. The ruler's highest duty is to the welfare of the state. Sometimes that requires uncomfortable compromises.
The burden of rule is making those difficult choices that others have luxury to avoid. When I didn't free the serf, despite believing serfdom wrong, I made such choice. The chaos of sudden emancipation seemed worse than the evil of continuing the system while working toward gradual improvement.
Precisely. The truly immoral ruler is not the one who sometimes employs necessary deception, but the one who creates harm through naive adherence to abstract principles without considering real consequences.
I wonder if citizens in these modern democracies understand these complexities, or if they demand impossible standards of complete transparency and perfect virtue from their leaders.
Well, human nature changes little over centuries. People have always preferred comforting illusions to uncomfortable truths. The difference is merely in scale and method.
Ah, it seems our time in this extraordinary lounge draws to a close. What a fascinating journey through the corridors of power this conversation has been. I find myself reluctant to see it end.
Indeed, Your Imperial Majesty. It has been a profound honor to exchange ideas with you. You indeed embody perfectly the dual nature required for true mastery of power. The strength of the lion and the cunning of the fox.
Such eloquent flattery, Niccolò. Had we met during my time on Russian throne, I might have kept you very close at court. As an advisor, of course. The minds that truly understand power are far more valuable than those who merely worship it.
Strange, isn't it? Centuries separate us, yet here we are, discussing truths that so many have misunderstood or deliberately distorted after our deaths.
Perhaps that's why this lounge exists, to give us opportunity to present ourselves as we truly were, not as history has painted us.
And what a rare gift that is.
One final question before we part, Niccolò. If you could whisper just one secret into the ear of future prince or princess that was never written in your books, what would it be?
An intriguing question. Perhaps this. The most dangerous moment for any ruler is not when facing enemies, but in the quiet aftermath of victory. That is when ambition often overreaches wisdom. The greatest art is knowing when to stop conquering. A toast seems appropriate, don't you think?
Absolutely.
To power wisely wielded, then, and to those rare souls who understand its true nature.
And to the most stimulating conversation I've had in centuries. You know, Niccolò, perhaps it's true what they say after all.
And what might that be, Your Majesty?
That the pen is indeed mightier than the sword, especially in such skilled hands as yours.
Thank you for listening to the Time Capsule Lounge. Back our passion project at patreon.com/timecapsulelounge and help us keep summoning the extraordinary for unexpected timeless talks.